Mr. Cousins is approaching, and we'll set him up at the might be easier, going around.
It's all dictated on TV.
Sorry for the exactly.
Got to get him on camera.
We got to there has to be a visual aspect to this as Mr. Cousins grabs the headset. Thanks for giving us some time, man. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Are you a Cubs fan?
I grew up a Cub fan. Yeah, you did too. That's what I thought.
Grew up in the northwest suburbs.
Yeah, well, I did too. In fact, my sister is a girls varsity basketball coach for 30 years, Barrington. Which
that's where I grew up.
You grew up in, exactly right.
I would have gone to high school there. We moved to Michigan in 2001.
She's built a very nice. In fact, they made it to the state championship game last year, and I was fortunate enough to actually follow them and go to all the games. It was for a guy who's in my business, who's supposed to try to be somewhat objective. It was so cool to just let that all go and just be a flat-out idiot fan yelling at the refs.
At Barrington High School.
All that bit, Barrington High School. She's still there.
World.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, it is a small world. Well, thanks for coming to see us.
Yeah.
Things went long today. Is everything okay, first of all? Are you just doing some extra stuff?
I haven't checked the clock. I think it's the combination of normal training camp practice with a desire to prepare for the Raiders a little bit. So we're trying to do two things at once, but it was good work today for sure.
It was, okay. So we're all trying to figure out with a new regime how that changes things for everybody. You've been around this new group here for a while now. What for you personally, and we hear a lot of speculation about, well, this is better for Kirk because of this. This is better because of that. But we don't always hear it from you. I'd rather hear it from you. So from your perspective, what stands out to you as being, doesn't have to be better or worse, but just different in terms of the approach?
Yeah. Honestly, it's the language for me. It's the terminology. It's okay, I've run such and such a play for the last 4 years here in Minnesota, but we're not using those words to call that play. We're using completely different language to call those plays. So at first when you hear the words, you don't see a picture of the play in your head, which enables you to play fast. You have to keep practicing calling the play and drawing the play and watching film of it to get to a place where when it's called, you can see the picture in your head and execute it instinctively, and we're getting there, and that's what this time all day every day is all about, is getting to a place where you can do it in your sleep.
Can you do it in your sleep yet?
I'm very close.
Yeah.
Kevin asked me 1 to 10, where were you in the spring and where are you now, and I feel like I was a 4 out of 10 in the spring. I mean, it was going to take time, and I'm thinking I'm closer to that 8, maybe 9 right now. And it's also difficult because we have our entire offense in. So in certain periods, Kevin could call from anywhere in our offense, any play. That's arguably more difficult than it would be in a game plan when you have a specific plan that you know that you can really hone in on.
There have been some indications that it appears, again, and this is why I wanted to talk to you about it, is that in this offense, the way it's set up, that it doesn't just give actually, it demands of the quarterback that they make more decisions at the line of scrimmage. Is that overcooked, overdone as a concept?
That's fair. I think that's fair. I think there's and there's different philosophies that have pros and cons. And so in the prior offense we played in, it was the plays had the answers. We call the play, you go up, find the answer that the play has in it. That takes its own mastery, right? To know that where the bones are buried. This has a little more of a, hey, if we're not running the optimum play, let's get to the optimum play. And so you have both, and quite frankly, we're still going to have our plays where we say, hey, no matter the look, let's call it and haul it. So everybody has, similarities, but there are certain differences.
There was much made about, there was one moment apparently where you went through a progression, you off the first play and changed to something else, and supposedly the coach said, no, with that look, I want you to stick with the original call on that. Can you translate that? And that, again, might be something that's been blown out of proportion. But was that indicative of how this is different than what you are accustomed to?
I think there's going to be, at times, in specific plays, specific reads, specific coverages, a different philosophy or different emphasis to say, hey, we want to do this against that coverage. And for the last 4 years, you would say, well, we were trying to do something different.
Right.
And so both are good, both work, both have answers. And I haven't been with many offensive coordinators in my career, I think a total of 8 in 11 years. You've seen a lot of different ways to do it. But there certainly are great answers here, and it's not so much about arguing with what to do.
Right.
It's more about whatever we need to do, I need to get to a place where it's instinctual, and there's no thinking, there's no discussion, it's understood. Obviously, time is the best way to get there. After 4 years together, you have that. We don't have time. So we got to get there in a matter of less than 4 weeks.
Kirk Cousins is our guest, and the fan practice has indeed just wrapped up. When I ask you about whether this offense allows a quarterback to take more chances, it's a loaded term because it can mean a lot of different things. But does it? I mean, is there more almost encouraged in this offense that might be classified in the previous regime as how you're kind of taking a chance there, taking more of a shot there than we want you to?
Hard to say. I think that we have to get into games really to get a feel for that in totality. I think that ultimately, if someone's open, no matter who the coach is,
right,
and it was a chance for a big play, you want to hit it, and vice versa. If it was a chance at a turnover or it was going to lead to a critical error, we're not trying to force the ball just to say that we tried. So I think at the same time, or at an overarching theme, I would say it's pretty much consistent. You want to make good decisions with the football no matter what the scheme or coach is.
I don't know how much time you spent in the offseason studying Stafford when he made the move there. It's a different head coach, but it's, presumably much of the same offense. If you did you learn anything about what that offense seemed to afford him that he hadn't had before? Does anything stand out to you?
Well, I think, the big thing with Matthew, too, is understand that it's a team, and so when Matthew left Detroit and goes to L.A., I believe the Rams were the number one defense in the league when he went there. So there's some level of, it's not even necessarily the offensive system. It's, hey, they got Aaron Donald. that's a tremendous asset to have on a team. And I think what's exciting being here in Minnesota is I felt in all my now 5 years here that I never step on the field and feel like we don't have the horses to compete and to win. And that's a blessing because I think there are teams and situations at quarterback where you walk on the field and you know that there's some challenges and there's some thinned out areas on your team. But I've always felt good about where we were and where we are roster-wise, and that's a huge help as a quarterback.
Another subject that's come up a lot is about the question of a relationship between a starting quarterback anywhere and the head coach or whoever that person is sort of is identified as the offensive voice. Do we make too much of that, or is that something that you think you can't make too much of, that it really is essential, and how is that playing out for you with O'Connell?
I do think that your daily dialogue, your daily work and communication on the field, off the field, in the meeting room with the offensive staff, with the play caller is very important. And I've been fortunate here in my time in Minnesota to be with some really good ones. And my only challenge is that they've changed because Kevin left to go be a head coach. And Gary retired, and Clint was, I thought, really strong last year. But when you have change, you don't have the time, as I alluded to earlier, to kind of build that over time. And so I'm optimistic and excited and looking forward to creating a place where we win a lot of games here, have a lot of success, and hopefully Kevin and I can work together for a very long time.
Another story that I want to go to the horse's mouth, in you in this case, is because I don't know if you've been asked this directly or not. If I have, forgive me. If you have, forgive me, and I might have missed it. But Ben Lieber, who I think pretty well, he's a big member of the Fan Radio Network, he made some news when he was attempting to analyze what he thought was a problem. I'll give you the direct quote, "I think Kirk's going to finally thrive, really thrive, in a system and a coach that actually respects him." I mean, it's not like I'm not breaking news here that Mike Zimmer did not like Kirk Cousins, and I think that showed in the way that Kirk behaved and the way that he carried himself. The team was never given to him, or he was never allowed to learn the trust of the team because the head coach, I think, just didn't like him. Is Ben right?
Let me say this. I was fortunate enough to go to 2 Pro Bowls under Coach Zimmer. We won a playoff game, a very difficult playoff game that nobody gave us a chance to win. I've gotten better every year I've been here, and I look back on my years with Coach Zimmer and I say he was very good to me. I wish we had won more games, and the head coach and the quarterback tend to take the brunt of that, and they always will, always have and always will. But I think that it's been a little bit misreported. I think he was an asset to my career, very much so, and I think that's been lost somehow in the offseason.
Is it more comfortable, though? I think just naturally, leaving Mike out of it, if the main voice you're hearing as a head coach is an offensive-minded guy, we know Mike is a defensive guy, that does have to have some advantages for you, correct?
I think you take it both ways, right? Because I think that what Coach Zimmer did a great job with me on was protecting the football and making good decisions with the football. I mean, I just finished a 2-minute period today and threw a pick, and I got to get, there's still a lot of improvement that I'm looking to do in this camp right now. So, no, it's been good dialogue with Kevin. He's doing a great job leading our whole team, and we want to make sure on offense that myself, Dalvin, Adam, Justin, Brian O'Neill, guys who have started a lot of football games here, that we help a first-year head coach, and we don't put too much on him, and that we as players step up to the plate and play at a very high level like veterans should to help this team win football games.
So you didn't feel uncomfortable with Mike? You think that has been overblown?
Oh, it's been very overblown.
Because, I mean, I feel like sometimes it's like if I were in your position, it's almost like, well, I don't want to go there. Even if I think differently, there's no upside to me going there, and why is this jackass continuing to ask me about that? But this is how you really feel.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. In my business, they do rankings where they rank talk show hosts in the afternoon nationally. I'm lucky with some of these services. If I finish in the top, occasionally I might finish in the top 20, but I'd never finish in the top 10. And it frosts me, to be honest with you, because I think I should be higher. Every one of the things that are done before seasons, you end up landing, and some of them allegedly involving general managers and coaches, anywhere from like 10 to 12 to 15. So does it bug you? Does it deep down frost you at all? Do you say that does bother you, or are you allowed to let it bother you? Or do you even think about that kind of stuff?
I think my story going back to high school has been one of being, a little overlooked, a little underrated, and for whatever reason over the last 15 plus years, that hasn't really changed. As you climb the next mountain, you look around and realize that hey, there's more mountains to climb, and I think I'm still in that spot, and I think it's a healthy spot to be. I think it's healthy to feel like you got something to prove. You want to go earn more. There's a lot more out there to go get. And I think ultimately quarterbacks will be judged on wins. We've been hovering around 500, had some success, done some great things, but ultimately winning is what will drive this, and that's where we got to go.
Some players say internally, though, it does drive them, that they do use that as part of their process of motivating themselves, preparing themselves. Others say, I don't care. I'm not gonna let other people get in my head. Where are you in that regard?
I think I've been using it as motivation since I was about 15 years old. When you go to a quarterback camp and they stack you up and they say, hey, you weren't one of the top guys here, and we're not going to offer you a scholarship, and we don't really think you have a future as Division I quarterback. I think you've been, putting that chip on your shoulder and going to work and using it as a way to keep working and staying humble and hungry for 15 plus years, and I'm still doing it. Is
this team, usually often when you make a coaching change, and in this case general managers change as well, it almost means a cleaning house, or the team is coming off like a 3-14 kind of a season, which you guys weren't that bad. But I'm wondering, when the changes were made, did you have any concern? Because there were a couple ways the organization could have gone. They could have said, we are going to not start over, but we're going to make major changes. Ultimately, they chose not to. They chose to say, we're going to keep the core together. We're going to try to make a couple of defensive changes and add a couple people here, subtract a couple people there, which I assume pleased you as the quarterback here, that it wasn't going to be we're starting over. But did you have any concern about that when a change is made, that where's this thing going to go? What might they decide to do?
Well, I think there's always change. So even when you say, hey, we didn't change it as much as we could have, if you look around, it's a new staff, new system. We got some new vets that we've signed and brought in. People like Zadarius Smith, who are meaningfully, that's a big change. That's a big difference to your team. So there's always change, and you're always kind of trying to put together the best possible options to go win a Super Bowl. And I think our organization, going back to January to now, I think has done a good job putting together those pieces. And now we've got to go win games, and that's where we are. And that's on the players as much as anything, and we look forward to that challenge.
Do you view this team as a team that should compete for a playoff berth? That the idea that it's because it's a new staff, there's going to take time. We're going to a 3-4 defense, and so you can't expect automatic, immediate success. Or do you view it as, no, this is in front of us. We should make the playoffs this year?
Yeah, and I don't know in my 11 years I've ever been on a team where I wouldn't say yes. I think all 11 years you would say, that's an expectation.
That's the way you go. A couple life questions here as we wrap things up. Your favorite motion picture growing up?
I've always liked sports movies and true stories.
Okay.
So I love Remember the Titans. That
Yeah.
comes to mind first. I guess 'cause I'm on a football field right now.
Yeah.
I love Ocean's 11. I love the Ocean's
yeah.
series, 11,
Good
12, and
great
13.
series, yeah.
I love the comedy mixed with kind of the suspense. So
Yeah.
That's a favorite of mine.
Are you a streaming guy? I mean, do you have any favorites?
I've got the Disney Plus subscription. That's probably more for my kids than anything. I still watch a lot of live TV, believe it or not.
Do you really?
I'm one of those dinosaurs watching live TV.
Yeah, there's not many left of you.
I'm a sports guy. I watch live sports, and I like documentaries and stuff like that. I turn on the TV most nights to my wife's chagrin and watch for about 20, 30 minutes, and then usually there's nothing on and I go to bed.
You're not, so you're not a big watcher in that
No,
regard.
I don't binge stuff at all, no.
That's good. The sport you would play, if you had the talent to play any sport, other than obviously football, the skills attached to it, outside of football, what would it be?
Well, speaking of the Cubs, it's funny. I went to a Cubs game like 2 or 3 summers ago and was just watching a major league game, and I looked over at my dad and I said, shortstop for the Cubs or the Twins or the Yankees, whoever, like, would that be cooler, quote unquote, than being the starting quarterback of the Vikings? Like, I don't know, would it? And my dad said, Kirk, I think quarterback in the NFL is about as good as it gets, right? I mean, that's pretty cool. And I said, you know what? I never thought of it, because you don't. You just take the next step and do your job and go to work, and you're living a dream. But when you go to another professional sporting event and you sit there and you say, I wouldn't trade what I'm doing for this, I think that's kind of that pinching moment where you realize you are living a dream, and you wouldn't trade playing quarterback for the Vikings to go play shortstop for the Yankees or the Cubs or the Twins. And you say, you know what? That must mean that this is a pretty special deal.
It's a pretty good gig, yeah. Although there's a lot of pressure then attached to it, because as you say, you're going to get blamed, perhaps more than you should. You're going to get praised when things go, perhaps more than you should as well. That there is no other position, I think, that in terms of pressure that I can think of that compares to be given how popular the National Football. You've been here long enough to know how popular the Vikings are
here in the state.
Yeah,
but again, why would you want to play for a team that wasn't?
That's true.
It's a total blessing to play for a team that's named after a state, not just a city. And you represent a history of, great players and Hall of Famers, and just a fan base that when you come out to training camp practice, they come out and they support you, and they pack out your home stadium, and they travel on the road. In many games, you go to places that there's arguably more Vikings than there are the home fans. So it's a blessing. Like you said, there's some high risk, high reward to it, and you love that. And, welcome to leadership. You get an opportunity to lead people and influence people. If it's worth anything, you're probably going to be in a position with some pressure and some risk, and that's okay. You got to understand that and welcome that.
Last question for you, maybe the most important. Have you ever tried ayahuasca, the special cocktail that apparently, I'm sure you may have heard Aaron Rodgers talk about how it freed his mind, it changed his life, and then it led to an MVP season. Have you ever been tempted?
Hey, I'm trying to win an MVP and a Super Bowl, and he's got a few MVPs and a Super Bowl, so I'll drink just about anything if it means we can guarantee that. But
so you won't rule it out.
It's funny. This summer I was with somebody back in Michigan who was originally from Minnesota, and they said there's something called a Minnesota cocktail, and it was orange juice, crushed ice, and there were a couple other ingredients, and it sounded pretty good. I had never heard of it. I brought it to Adam Thielen, Mr. Minnesota. Sure. He had never heard of it.
Really? Well.
So I may have to go on social media and see if it's a real thing. I'll have to figure out what those ingredients were, that Minnesota cocktail.
That makes sense, yeah. And apparently this stuff, I think, is illegal here, so I don't want you to get in any trouble there, but he had it elsewhere.
So he's good.
And he says it opened up his mind. So I don't know if that's Aaron being Aaron, or that he meant it, because he kind of likes playing the game a little bit, I think.
Yeah, well, based on his success in this league, I would think his mind was pretty open before he drank it.
That's probably true. Thanks, man. I enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely,
Thanks, Kirk.
Great
Much
to
appreciated.
Thank you.
Kirk Cousins helping us out from the perch. Vikings practice in the rearview mirror. We'll come back and maybe get to a top 5 at 5. Yeah, why not? That is coming up with Guardsy next here on The Fan.